Okay, we should be live. Let me just make sure. Yeah, so we're live. We're starting a little bit late here, like 3 minutes late. Hey everyone, good evening. This is Tech Thursdays, episode 148. This is going to definitely be one of the shorter episodes because I'm going to try to not sound like a broken record repeating the same things that we've been talking about for the last, what feels like 2 months, basically since the year started, namely the memory supply problems, the SSD memory, so basically NAND flash shortages, DDR5 shortages. I'm going to try to avoid talking about that on this episode of Tech Thursdays. So we are going to focus on some other things like this graphics card that is debuting in China here. And then we're also going to be looking at a new motherboard from ASUS. So ASUS released recently the ROG Crosshair X870E Dark Hero, and Tech Power Up has a review on their site. So we're going to be taking a look at that. And then we're also going to focus on an upcoming game for next week, and that is going to be Crimson Desert. So we're going to focus on the PC specifications for that game, as well as kind of my expectations for that game without paying attention to it for a while now. I'm trying not to get overhyped about the game because right now there's all this talk about Crimson Desert being the best game ever and blah 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 and all this stuff. So I'm just trying to tune all that out so that I don't set myself up for disappointment, because the problem with games and the hype train, as you guys probably already know, when a game gets hyped up so much and then if it just fails by a little bit to meet every single one of those fans' expectations or the public's expectations, it just ends up never recovering from that. So we're going to talk about it though later in the stream. But let's first start the discussion about the Lisuan debuts its new gaming Lisuan Extreme, I think that's how you say it, Lisuan graphics card and LX Pro AI cards in China. So it looks like this is an interesting design. You can see they've got a kind of a flow through on the back, and it looks like it's single fan, but that doesn't look. This must be a render because that's an axial looking fan, but I don't see a good path for it to flow. There's like a flow through cutout or whatever, but then it's like, how are you gonna? If most of the air goes out the back, then not very much of it's gonna go through this part, and this part's gonna end up running really hot. So it's probably a render, but anyway. So they've unveiled a new gaming next gen gaming. Now I don't know how much of this is just the journalists trying to hype it up, but Lisuan Tech has been working on its G100 GPU line for a while. The company unveiled these last year in July, and the first samples started shipping by the end of last year. Now the GPU maker is finally announcing its very first products that will feature the consumer-aimed G100 GPU, the 7G106. These are two lineups. There are two lineups, the Gaming Focus and the Pro Focus. So let's start with Gaming Focus. So that's it, 12 gigabyte GPU. Automatically, that kind of tells you what sort of market this is for. This is going to be for 1080p gaming, and then you have the 24 gigabyte, that's basically the workstation edition, the professional edition for AI, LX Pro, LX Ultra, LX Pro. Okay. LX Max. Okay. Which one? This one looks the most interesting to me. The second one. Yeah, this one looks good. LX Ultra looks good. Is that the only one that's 24 gig? Oh wait, no, the Pro is also okay. So they have an axial with 24 gigs. They have a blower style. They have a radial with 24 gigs, and they have what looks like a weird hybrid thing. And then is this a triple slot? No, that's a dual. That's a dual. And then it looks like there's a max. Okay, so whatever. So this is 12 gigs. So yeah, this, I don't know. It's kind of interesting. This is a Chinese GPU. In terms of specifications, it's powered by 6 nanometer. And the company's first true GPU card designed for gamers. This graphics card features 12 gigs of GDDR6 memory across a 192-bit bus. 192-bit bus automatically tells you what this is for. 1080p gaming. And PCIe 4.0 x16. The graphics card comes with a total of 192 TMUs, 96 drop. Yeah, so it does seem like, based off of these numbers, it sounds like a 1440p graphics card. Except, like, when I see, like, 225 watts, for example, 96 ROPS. This kind of tells me that's 1440p, but then I look at the bus width, it's only 192. It only has 12 gigs of RAM. You know, that kind of points me to more of this is a 1080p GPU. In terms of, let me see, what do they have here? It looks like they have 3 fans on this, actually. So it does look like this one is a triple fan axial. And it looks like it might be using the 12 volt high power connector. That's a nice way to sabotage their launch by putting something like that on there, considering how popular that is. In terms of design, the graphics card will come in a triple slot but it only has 2 fingers with 3 fans. Why do you need triple slot for 225 watts? Huh? Okay. Interesting. Okay. Unlike previous domestic offerings, this will feature out-of-the-box support for the latest AAA games. I wonder how... This must have been in development for a long time, because think about it, if you're going to be doing gaming graphics cards, you need to have a very robust you're going to need a very robust driver stack. 150. Yeah, technically you can get away with a single 8-pin for 225 watt. I don't recall a GPU. I'm trying to think of a GPU that was a single 8-pin that was 225 watts, though. I can't think of any. Most of the ones that I remember being 225 watts usually featured a single 8-pin plus an additional 6-pin. So I kind of think they probably are going to be using the 12-volt high-power connector. If I had to guess, just from the way the renders look. Notice how they don't show the 8-pin at all. They don't show you in the renders what this actually is using for the power. Anyway, so that's interesting. Chinese graphics cards. So, you know, if this, I said I wasn't going to talk about memory. I'm not going to talk about memory, but remember what I said a few weeks ago, how the only thing that can save us from the memory apocalypse, the ongoing memory apocalypse, is Chinese memory companies. That's literally the only thing. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck living like this until 2028. And that just makes the PC enthusiast hobby seem so unattractive right now, unfortunately. So anyway, that's some interesting stuff to see. New GPUs entering the market. These GPUs, if I had to guess, are going to be 1080p type GPUs. Even at 225 watts, I think it's 1080p GPU. All right, let's move on to a different topic. Let's talk about this new motherboard from ASUS. I think this is the main thing that people are going to be wanting to listen to. For people who watch my content, they usually like the motherboard content, if not the DDR5 content. But with memory being what it is, we don't really talk about memory these days. So, the Tech Power Up put out a review. And this was actually surprisingly 10 days ago. I just now noticed this, so I don't know why this only shows up now to me. But let's take a look at it. For those of you that are looking to upgrade to an enthusiast class level motherboard, the Dark Hero is probably going to be one of the better choices, I would say. Now, it's not the only choice. There's a lot of really good motherboards at this price range. And what is that price range? $700 price range. So the Dark Hero is a $700 motherboard. That automatically excludes it for a lot of people. I would say most people building PCs for gaming don't want to spend any more than like $300, I would say. I know most people like to spend under $300, but the problem is, unfortunately, unless you're spending around $300, you're missing out on a lot of things that the motherboard includes at $300 or above $300 compared to being below $300, if that makes sense. A good prime example of this is the postcode debug. If you're typically buying a motherboard for like $250 or less, you're most likely not going to get a postcode debug on your motherboard. And you might not think much of it right now, but you don't want to be in a situation where you can't troubleshoot or you have trouble troubleshooting a problem because you don't have basic visual diagnostic tools on the motherboard. It's like, yes, I know all motherboards have those little LEDs that blink when it's doing something, or it has the red LED and the white LED and the green and the orange LED, but those don't really tell you exactly what's going on. There, you can kind of guess and interpret what is going on when you're looking at an orange LED while the computer is booting up or while the computer is trying to post. It usually means memory training, FYI. But if it's not, and if it's just hung and you don't know, then you have no way of knowing without the postcode debug. So I personally don't recommend any motherboard that doesn't have a postcode debug. And that's the reason why typically I'll recommend the starting, unfortunately, the world that we live in today in 2026, the starting price for a decent motherboard is around $300 US. Or as Digital Foundry would say, 300 US units. I don't know why Rich said that one time, but that just stuck with me. Yes, of your 300 US units. So yeah, the Dark Hero is a $700 motherboard, so this is way beyond the minimum $300 price point. So this is definitely well into enthusiast territory, but it is not like the ultra insane crazy price points that we've seen on certain flagship motherboards, which we're not going to mention right now because we're going to be focusing on the Dark Hero. So this is the box. This is what comes in the box. Everything included besides the motherboard. So you have some SATA cables. It looks like you have 2 of them that are straight cable and 2 that have the right angle on one end. So the right angle ones are usually really good for 3.5-inch hard drives, and the straight through cables that don't have the 90-degree angle are really good for 2.5-inch SATA. And then we have some other stuff. There's like a card here. There is what looks to be a bracket with a fan included. That's really nice that they included that. That is meant for DRAM cooling, for overclocking memory well beyond 8,000 megatransfers. Okay. Then you have a Wi-Fi 7 antenna. They give you some extra SSD thermal pad stuff if you tear one of them up that's on the bottom of the heatsink or the base of the motherboard side where it sinks the heat on the motherboard side. Then you get the Q connector and what looks like more spacers for the NVMe drives and stuff like that. So not a whole lot of crazy stuff. Here is a full description of what those things are. Let's look at the board layout. So just by looking at this, I can already tell ASUS watched my videos that I did about the motherboards, because immediately looking at this, I can tell that ASUS addressed my complaints about the original Crosshair Hero, the X870E Crosshair Hero had some major flaws, and it looks in the realm of cooling, specifically in cooling. The Gen 5 SSD heatsink is vastly improved. This one has a dedicated heat pipe. In fact, this one is the same exact one that they have on the ROG Crosshair Extreme. So that is a $1,000 ASUS motherboard. So they took the heatsink on that motherboard and they stuck it on this $700 Crosshair Dark Hero. So that already is an immediate improvement over the barely passable Gen 5 heatsink on the original Crosshair Hero. So I can tell you guys, for reference, the Crosshair Hero with a Gen 5 SSD, typically while playing games, use the computer, your Gen 5 SSD is going to be cooking at like 73 degrees Celsius under load with the heatsink on the regular Crosshair Hero. So this is a significant improvement over that. Now, at idling, that one is around like 60 degrees Celsius. This one is probably going to be, I would say, 10 to 15 degree drop across the board versus the original heatsink featured on the Crosshair Hero. The other thing that I noticed, they have toolless disconnect. I would assume looks like toolless disconnect. The Crosshair Hero, the original one, requires you to have a screwdriver to remove two or three screws. I think 2 screws if I remember correctly. There's 2 screws that you have to manually remove. That goes against all the other motherboards that we looked at for the X870E launch, where all of them moved to a toolless system, where ASUS was the one that did not move to a toolless system for some weird reason, where like everyone else was just so much more convenient to install SSDs because you didn't have to have a screwdriver. So I can see immediately here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks like there are 4 SSD slots on here, which is 1 less than what we got on the original Hero. So I'm curious to know what ASUS did with the lanes, because the original Crosshair Hero offered up to 3 Gen 5 SSDs with 2 additional Gen 4 SSDs off of the chipset, which means you could drive a total of 5 SSDs on the regular X870E Crosshair Hero. Now, that means if you're going to use the 2nd and 3rd Gen 5 SSD, you will run your graphics card at half lanes, because the 2nd and 3rd Gen 5 SSDs on the Hero share lanes with the graphics card. I suspect that ASUS, like I said before, probably paid attention to what I said about the lane allocation when we basically did the deep dives on all these motherboards back in 2024. So this to me looks, I'm going to suspect that this motherboard doesn't share the lanes in the same way that the original Crosshair Hero did. And the other thing I'm noticing, the button is back. ASUS brought back the button. In fact, this button literally looks like it's taken from the MSI button. Because remember, ASUS had the toolless, no button, quick disconnect for the GPU, but it had a severe flaw where it would scratch the PCIe peg slot on the GPU. I already have like 3 graphics cards that have all been scratched up real nice from my Crosshair Hero. So I can definitely attest to that being a severe, significant flaw with ASUS's design of the Q latch on the X870E and the Intel Z890 ASUS motherboards. Also, like the Maximus, for example, suffers from the exact same flaw. So all of the Arrow Lake motherboards from ASUS, all of the X870 motherboards from ASUS that are not this one, they all suffer from the ability to scratch your graphics card's slot right here. We've talked about that. So they brought back the button. Their fix was to bring back the traditional button. So that's nice to see. I wonder what that means for the lower slot though. Because the nice thing about, the one thing I will say, even though it scratches the graphics card connector, it was on both slots. So I could scratch my top graphics card when I removed it, and I can also scratch my second graphics card when I remove it, or whatever I plug in down here, I can scratch that up too. So yeah, it was on all slots. So it was nice because you don't have to reach in there to try to reach this connector with like a chopstick or something. So it was very convenient, but it was definitely flawed. So anyway, so they brought back the traditional button. It looks like everything else besides that has stayed the same. The heatsink design for the rest of the NVMEs are a little bit different looking. This one looks a little bit more like the Maximus design on the Intel board, and then you've got what looks like a different LED display on the I/O shroud. Backplate on the back looks the same, except now it says Dark Hero instead of the regular Hero. Okay, and as I had expected, looking at the heatsink, now with the heatsinks removed, we can clearly see they have 4 SSDs, 4 SSD slots. Slim SAS remains. There's still a Slim SAS right here. I can immediately determine this is a Slim SAS, so that's very good to see. So you've got a Gen 5 NVMe slot. These two on the previous one were Gen 5, but I suspect that's not true this time around because, well, I don't know. It wouldn't make sense to do. Maybe one of these is Gen 5 and the remaining 2 at the bottom are Gen 4 off of the chipset. This one's definitely a Gen 4. And then you have Slim SAS, then you have the bottom PCIe slots. So this could end up being a slightly better version of the Hero versus the original one. You can see the dual chipsets down here. You have your primary one here, or maybe this is the primary one, and then this is the secondary one. I'm going to guess this one's the secondary, so it's probably going to go down this way. This connects directly to the CPU. We'll draw the block diagram later, but this one goes to CPU. This one either goes to the CPU or it goes to the primary chipset. And then I'm going to say that these two, number 3 and number 4, probably go to the bottom chipset down here, or something along those lines. Maybe there's a MUX or a redriver or a splitter or something along those lines for the oh, I'm about to say MSATA. It's not MSATA. What is this thing? I just said it earlier. The Slim SAS. The Slim SAS connector probably shares with this, or maybe it's separate. Because if this is 4 and 4, that's 8. So now you only got these guys. Yeah, one of these is probably sharing with either the GPU or what's more likely going on, this second NVMe is sharing with this guy up here. Basically, if you guys remember when we looked at motherboard refreshes last year for X3D CPUs, we found that ASRock and Gigabyte started copying MSI's secret technique. It's like they all went to King Kai's planet and they all trained and they all learned the same technique. They all copied MSI. I wouldn't be surprised. ASUS typically doesn't copy, but I don't know, man. This looks like ASUS straight up copied MSI's push button that's on the Tomahawk with this design. It's circular. Although ASUS probably just reused their old design that they used previously prior to the one that scratches the GPU. So that's probably not a copy, but I wouldn't be surprised if ASUS has copied MSI for one of these NVMEs. Just because it's just way too convenient to do what MSI did, because MSI was so smart. Okay. So let's take a look at some of these pictures. You get a lot of fan headers. They have covers for the fan headers. Rubber covers for the fan headers. Interesting. And then you have the postcode debug. Very good. Flex key, start button, all that good stuff. Another cover for the... That's interesting. 4 SATA. Oh, wait a minute. That's not Slim SAS. What is that? That's another USB 3.2 Gen 2x1 or 2x2. That looks like 20 gigabit USB, 20 gigabit USB. I'm just thinking because U20G and U20G. This is probably, these are both front panel 20 gigabit USB-C. Does that mean they do not have Slim SAS anymore? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Slim SAS looks like it's not here anymore. I really thought that was a Slim SAS. Is that a right-angled USB-C? Yeah. The second slot just offers the same 20 gig without... Gone is the Slim SAS connector. Probably people complained because a lot of people probably didn't want to use the Slim SAS. And I can totally understand why. Because it's way less practical on a consumer-oriented product. But Slim SAS was really nice. I can tell you I'm using the Slim SAS on my Hero, and that thing is good. So, it's kind of, I don't know if I consider that a downgrade. Depends on what they've done with those NVMEs, because this is actually, wow, if there's, okay, hold on a second, that changes everything. There's only 4 NVMEs. Oh, wait, no, it looks like there's a 5th one. There's a 5th one right down here. Hold on, look, there's a mini one. There's a mini one down here. But this one looks like it's only... This is a... what is it? 2242? This is like a 2242. That means you have to... It forces you to use a small SSD for the last one. Usually those don't have any DRAM. It's either 2230 or 2242. That might be... It might be 22... It might be 2230. It's either 2230 or 2242. So I don't know. This is kind of... I don't know, guys. Oh, I have a 2242. I have a 2242 in one of my laptops. That's either 2230 or 2242. But it looks like you don't have a choice. You're like locked into that one spec. I don't know. All of a sudden, I don't know how I feel about this motherboard compared to the original Hero. I guess the one good thing about it is it brought back the button, so you don't have to worry about scratching your GPU anymore. That's probably the only improvement, though. Because now you lose Slim SAS. And probably a good 95% of all the people that bought this motherboard or bought the original Hero never plan on using the Slim SAS. But the Slim SAS, to me, is a much nicer thing to have than this tiny little NVMe down here. You know what I'm saying? That, to me, feels kind of like a downgrade, to be honest. Because with Slim SAS... You can put whatever you want in the Slim SAS. You just need to buy the Slim SAS cable, hook it up to the SATA power, and then you're good to go. You can run like what I'm doing. I'm doing M.2 to U.3 adapter. So I can take whatever M.2 I want, and I can plug it in my Slim SAS. Or you can go and get one of those enterprise NVMe SSDs on U.3 or U.2, and you can plug in like a, I don't know, like a 20 terabyte SSD, which is NVMe, not SATA, NVMe. So you can get a really big, thick SSD on that Slim SAS. With this one, you're basically relegated to this tiny little puny 2230 or 2242 SSD down here as the 5th SSD. So I don't know, like right now, I'm kind of mixed on this. This doesn't feel like it's an upgrade over the original Hero. In some technically it could be a downgrade. It does have the button. I mean, the only nice thing so far is you don't have to worry about scratching your GPU. That's like the only thing I've seen so far. We'll look at the block diagram later. So 4 SATA. Okay. More connectors, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Oh, this is an upgrade. This is definitely an upgrade. If you want to run a true Gen 5 NVMe drive, this heatsink is sufficient to handle a true Gen 5 SSD, whereas the one that comes with the original Hero barely even manages to pass. It is almost failing, as far as I'm concerned. So this one is significantly better. This is the one on the $1,000 ROG Extreme. I mean, look at that. That is the thick. That is the thick. So then you've got, okay, then yeah, see, look, that's a tiny little, that looks like a 2230. That's probably 2230. Yeah, it says it right here, tiny 2230. Okay, so it's technically, it still has 5 NVMe slots, just like the original Hero. But with the original Hero, all of them were your standard 2280, whereas this thing has one of them that is only a 2230. And the original also has Slim SAS. So the original has 5 NVMe's on the board plus Slim SAS. This one has 5 NVMe's on the board, but one of them is a mini and there's no Slim SAS. So this one is basically 5 NVMe's and that's it. Whereas the original Hero was 5 NVMe's plus Slim SAS, and all 5 NVMe's were full 2280. So far, I kind of think the original one might be a little bit better in some ways. It does have a little heatsink there, for those who dare, for the 2230, covering up the clear CMOS battery. Although that is a really interesting location for that clear CMOS battery. Here is another improvement. This is something that ASUS started including with the Apex, as well as, well, actually no, the Apex has a special one that's way better than this, but the Extreme featured this. The original Hero does not have this fan, which is a huge letdown considering that is an overclocker enthusiast type motherboard. That is $700, and it didn't include the nice cooling fan for the DRAM. This makes a massive difference if you ever want to run DDR5 over 8,000 megatransfers. Without this fan, you cannot run above 8200. It will not be stable while gaming because your GPU will dump way too much heat into the case, overwhelming the RAM, and once the RAM hits like 60 degrees Celsius, it will be unstable at 8200 megatransfers. So there's literally no way to run the memory stable without active cooling like this fan. So this is actually a very, very important feature for anyone who wants to run DDR5 8200 or 8400 or anything beyond that, and you are setting yourself up for CUDIMM or CUDIMM in the future. This will come in very handy for any of those type of memory configurations. Okay, here is another improvement. So there is another improvement here. ASUS, remember what I said, I gave all the negative things about the original Hero. And so far, it's with the one exception being ASUS got rid of Slim SAS. I never told them to get rid of Slim SAS, although I did say something. I did criticize Slim SAS in one area. I did say in my review, it probably would have been better if instead of Slim SAS, they included a dedicated X4 PCIe slot, because most people are more likely to utilize a dedicated PCIe slot at the bottom of the motherboard that has 4 lanes versus some random Slim SAS that takes up those 4 lanes, and they don't know what to do with Slim SAS, or they have to go and buy a cable, they have to go buy an adapter, or they have to go buy an expensive SSD. So you know what I'm saying? That was my criticism of the Slim SAS. So it looks like they listened to everything I said. They put the button back, they improved the Gen 5 cooling, they got rid of the Slim SAS, although I didn't really care. I mean, I'd still been okay if they kept the Slim SAS. And they added the fan, because that was another criticism. I was like, how come the Apex and the Extreme come with this, but the Hero doesn't? So now the Hero has this. And my biggest #1 complaint, and they addressed it, was no 10 gig LAN on a $700 motherboard. And here they have included 10 gig LAN, and they kept the 5 gig LAN. So they got rid of the puny 2.5 gig in place of this 10 gig now. So ASUS has literally addressed every single one of my complaints. The one thing that they didn't address, although I do see they did make up for it, was, remember what I said? I said 6 Type A on the back is like minimum spec. So for a $700 motherboard, 6 Type A USBs is like not enough. But what they've done is they've added another 10 gig USB-C, because the original Hero has 4. It has your dual USB, your Thunderbolt 4s, which are these are the Thunderbolt 4s, and then you've got, it had like 2 10 gig USB-C. Now they've added a third 10 gig USB-C. So still 6 Type A, but they now include 10 gig LAN, and they added another USB at the top here. So it's okay. This is significantly better than the terrible I/O on the back of the original Hero, especially at $700. The I/O on the back of the Hero was so bad. It was just so bad. So they fixed pretty much everything. Although, I don't know, I kind of feel like it would have been nice to have kept the Slim SAS, but whatever. It kind of depends on, like, what is this? Is this the dedicated X8 that shares lanes? I'm hoping it is. Or maybe it's a dedicated 4. I don't know. We have to get into the block diagram. But let's see, component analysis. I don't care too much about the component analysis because these motherboards are super overkill anyway for a Ryzen CPU. So you can see this is the thermal pads for the chipsets. Oh, that's another thing about the Hero. The original Hero, the chipsets run very hot. We're talking like 70 degrees. I don't know why the Hero has the chipsets running so hot compared to Gigabyte and MSI and ASRock, where they typically run 15 to 20 degrees cooler on the competitor boards, and ASUS, for some reason, the chipsets run so hot. So I don't know if this improves that. It probably does, since this looks like it's dedicated now. It's not sharing with the... Well, actually, no, that's not true. It looks like it's the same one. So I don't know. We'll have to... The only way to know is to see what if they measure it. And then they put a giant block on the ASM 4242. Man, that is a massive heatsink for the USB 4 controller, for the dual 40 gigabit USB 4 for all those external graphics cards that one might connect up to this. So you can end up running like quad GPU on this motherboard. 2 external via this, and 2 internal on those PCIe slots. So you can do Gen 5. I believe it's going to be Gen 5 X8, Gen 5 X8, and then this is going to be Gen 3 X4 times 2 or split across 2. So, yeah, 4 GPUs, man. All for AI. All in the name of AI. All right, there it is. There it is. We talk about this on every single motherboard review, on every single motherboard block diagram that I ever draw. I must always include the ASM 4242. There it is. This little guy gets this big fat heatsink. I have no idea why, but okay, it does. So then you have the who cares? Who cares? Irrelevant. Okay, this is the that is the USB-C 10 gig. There's 2 of them. So interesting. That's how they did it. They did it via like a daughter board. So they're probably using a PCIe lane. They're probably using a lone PCIe lane. This is going to have an interesting block diagram. And then there's the Wi-Fi 7 in there. MediaTek Wi-Fi 7 MT7927 for Wi-Fi 7. All right, VRM, who cares? Not important. All right, cooling extends to the backplate. This is really nice to see. You got backplate, you got heat sink for the, you get the backplate basically pulling heat from the VRMs away as well as the chipset. Okay, whatever. All right, 20 stage, who cares? Okay, whatever. All right, the reason why people are probably like, why are you glossing over this? Because other people cover the overclocking, and this is already overkill anyway. So I don't need to doubt or second guess these things. So I'm not going to waste time on these things. Okay, I covered the stuff that no one else covers, you know, like USB 4 controllers and all the other stuff. And what you actually use your motherboard with. Okay, let's look at SSD performance and temperature. What I really care to see is how much does that new heatsink improve the temperature. Okay, so the new one with a Gen 5 SSD is this under load or is this... This is under load. Okay, 70 Celsius is surprisingly not as good as I thought it would be. Gen 4 is also not as good as I thought it would be. 57C? Oh, that's the bottom. Okay, 54C for the top one. I assume this is under load. This would be terrible if this was idle. The Gen 4 result looks pitiful if that's idle. So I would imagine this is under load. The Gen 5 70C under load, that's okay. The bottom slot, Gen 5, okay. So they actually do have a second... It looks like they have a second Gen 5 slot that shares the heatsink with the rest of the SSDs. And that one runs hot, like almost 80C. Okay, this one... What is this? Gen 4. Best temp. Gen 5, 70... why is the Extreme so much better when it looks like it's physically the exact same heatsink? I don't know. That's weird. But see what I say? See what I'm saying? Oh, that's Apex. Where's Crosshair Hero? That's BTF. But see, like, okay, see what I mean? 80 Celsius. 80 Celsius. 80 Celsius on the original Hero. This one is literally, remember I said 10 to 15 degrees lower. This is a 10-degree improvement over the original Hero. 80 Celsius down to 70 Celsius. That is a significant drop in temperature. So this is vastly improved. Performance. The memory. So the CPU they're using is a Ryzen 9 9950X. Okay, very good CPU. And it does look, the results look like they're toward the top. It's like coming in third place on the memory copy. You know, the only one that's doing better, ASRock, is doing the best. Memory latency, the original Crosshair Hero 6070. I don't know. Personally, when it comes to these type of results, I take these with a grain of salt because this stuff is kind of like... It's so... I don't know. Unless you're seeing something like... Okay, if there was a motherboard on this chart that was like 120 nanometers of latency, yeah, then that's a significant difference. But the difference between 75 nanoseconds and 67 nanoseconds, the user's never going to notice that. Seriously. Memory read, okay, 80,000 megabytes per second. Okay, so it's doing good. Phantom gaming is like literally like right underneath it though, barely. Writing, again, ASUS and ASRock, you know, are really, really good. I said this before. Media encoding, HEVC. This is using the integrated graphics on the Ryzen CPU. Y-Cruncher, very fast, very good results. ASUS and ASRock. Cinebench. They're all the same. Multi-core, they're all the same. All right, Baldur's Gate, blah, blah, blah. Okay, yeah, the difference between the highest, so the Apex is 168. That means this game is memory sensitive because Apex is probably super high end for memory. Wukong is a GPU bound game, doesn't matter. Counter Strike 2. I don't understand why there's such a huge discrepancy here though. Like 596 on a Glacial versus 591 on a Dark Hero. There's like barely any difference. But then all of a sudden you have this NZXT and you have the original Crosshair Hero like way at the bottom of the list. Like really, the original Crosshair Hero is 549 versus the new. Like, I don't know. I find these results kind of like whatever, to be honest. Like, I'm not going to base my motherboard purchase off of these results. Okay, Dark Hero review. What matters to me when buying a motherboard is not like this stuff. It's actually the things that it comes with. Like, how many USB ports does it have? What's the PCIe slot layout? What's the lane sharing configuration like? How many SSDs can I install? Those are the sort of things that actually matter. Because this stuff is like whatever, man. Like, this could be so many different things. Like, this could be the difference between a Windows update or a background process or whatever. So it's like, okay. Overclocking. What did they do here for overclocking? They did the they load Expo 1, which is the ASUS Expo instead of the memory manufacturer's Expo. So for those wondering, like, okay, if you have an ASUS motherboard and you load Expo 1, do you know who here knows what the difference between Expo 1 and Expo 2 is? I hope people that are watching this know the difference, because there is a difference between Expo 1 and Expo 2. Do you guys know the difference between Expo 1 and Expo 2? In an ASUS, it's an ASUS BIOS thing. Anybody know? Expo 1 does less timings. Expo 1 means it will read only the primary timings. And then ASUS, the ASUS motherboard, will figure out the rest. It will sense what the secondary and tertiary timings need to be based off of how the memory is reacting when ASUS's BIOS is doing the memory training. That is what Expo 1 does. Expo 2 loads all of the Expo profile. So whatever the memory manufacturer programmed in to the SPD, Expo 2 will load all of it. So Expo 2 is by the book in the sense that it means it will load everything the way the memory manufacturer intended. So if it's a G-Skill memory kit, G-Skill programs the Expo profile into the SPD. If you want to use every single one of G-Skill's values, load Expo 2. If you load Expo 1, you're basically telling the motherboard, you figure it out, but load the primaries from G-Skill, and then you figure out what the rest needs to be. That's what Expo 1 does. Personally, what I do, I load Expo 2. I don't let the motherboard have any decision making. For me, Expo 2, I trust G-Skill or Corsair or whoever's the one who has their logo on the memory, and I just go Expo 2. That's it. Don't think about it. Don't second guess it. Just do as I tell you. Put Expo 2 in. Load everything. Done. That's it. And I never have a problem. You guys would be surprised how many comments I still get on my memory overclocking videos of people like, oh, I tried following your instructions. It's like I load Expo and it's crashing. It's crashing. And I'm thinking like, and I'm thinking like, first of all, they're not even saying what motherboard they have. Sometimes they do. And here the funny thing is, it's like, I followed everything you said. I load Expo from the ASUS and it crashes. And I'm thinking like, I bet the guy loaded Expo 1. Anyway, so I'm not saying you can't use Expo 1. I'm just saying, like, if you trust ASUS's motherboard, load Expo 1. If you don't trust ASUS's motherboard, or rather, if you would rather follow what your memory provider, whether it's Corsair, Team Force, G-Skill, Guile, Kioxia, whoever, if you trust those guys, the ones who actually like tested the memory in their labs and validated, okay, these are the specs for Expo. If you trust that, load Expo 2. If you don't trust that or you don't care about that and you're like, okay, ASUS, just think about it, figure it out, man. Figure it out as you go. Build the airplane in the air. You know, like, then load Expo 1. If you want to live life on the edge, load Expo 1. If you know, if you just let's do things by the book and let's get this done. I ain't got time for, if you're a I ain't got time for that, load Expo 2. That's simple. That's it. And because you know I ain't got time for that. So no ASUS, no thank you. Nice try. Load Expo 2. Let's move on. Okay, very good. All right, auto and all this stuff because no one has any time to mess with these stupid things. And then we've got AMD Eco mode. They turned AMD Eco mode on. Okay, and then we've got all this other stuff. Auto, everything auto, blah, blah, blah. Turbo game mode, turn that trash off. Gaming adaptive CCD, Parker. This looks like it's related to their CoreFlex thing, I guess. Actually, no, that's not related to CoreFlex. Gaming adaptive CCD, Parker. Okay, man. Like, is that like an ASUS thing? I don't know. That sounds hilarious. Okay. Memory VDD. That's some very high VDDQ. Why did they need to run 1.4 volts? Like, is this, what is this? Is this like an 8200 mega transfer kit or something? Like, what is this 1.4? That's way too much voltage. I don't know. Anyway, they're just showing the menus. Whatever. We're done here. Value and conclusion. The ASUS Crosshair Hero is $700, or the Dark Hero is $700. It looks great. It has 10 gigabit Ethernet. It has tool-free M.2 all around. Isolated CPU. Okay, so that basically means it has base clock overclocking. Cable-free AIO liquid cooling support. That's new. Is that new? Cable-free. Cable-free AIO liquid cooling support. Oh, that means they're using magnetic, right? Hold on, I didn't notice that. Let me see something here. Oh, right here. Okay. That's cool. That's cool. Okay, so if you're into like liquid cooling and stuff, that's a new thing. Right here. These gold circles right here. It says right here, or somewhere, it mentioned it. Anyway, let's go back to the conclusion. 60-watt front panel USB-C type power delivery. Excellent EFI. It's worth noting that you need to have, if you want to benefit from that, this is like a fast charging for your phone or something. If you want to utilize this, you need to have a computer case that can actually support this. Otherwise, it won't do anything. Like, you won't actually benefit from the 60 watt. So you need to have an actual case that can support that power delivery through the actual pin layout on that USB-C. Excellent EFI software, plenty of rear USB-C. This was an improvement over last time. Minimal bandwidth sharing. Okay, we're gonna do the block diagram next, so everyone will get the full analysis. Double-sided cooling on all M.2. This is an improvement because the original one only had it on the 3 Gen 5 SSDs. The 2 Gen 4 chipset SSDs were not double-sided. The underside didn't have like a thermal pad. 64 megabyte BIOS. Okay, that's nice. So they doubled up from 32. Very expensive, lacks standout features. I would say the one thing that stands out to me is the included fan for the memory cooling. However, Gigabyte has that as well. And I think ASRock has that on the OCF. Lower M.2 heatsink performance was disappointing. Yeah, that did kind of stick out too in those numbers. Uninspiring. Uninspiring SSD temperature. So again, this was a problem with the original Hero, and unfortunately, I thought that the giant heat pipe on the Gen 5 heat SSD would solve all the problems, and it doesn't really solve all the problems. So ASUS probably, if I had to guess, the clips for the toolless fastener for the heatsink probably are not applying enough pressure down on the SSD. And that's probably why the temperatures are so bad on this motherboard. VRM temperatures, because I remember looking at my Hero board and I'm like, man, why are the Gen 5 thermals terrible? They're like awful. And it's like, it feels like the heatsink is not pressing down on, I mean, it's making contact, but it's not pressing down enough on the SSD to soak up all the heat. So that, if I had to guess, that it's a lack of mounting pressure on the NVMe. And that's probably what's causing these lousy SSD temperatures. Second PCIe Gen 5 M.2 shares bandwidth. Oh, they're doing what? They did it. They went and copied MSI's homework just like everyone else did last year. So now, not only did ASRock copied MSI, Gigabyte copied MSI, ASUS has joined the club. Now everyone has copied MSI for that second Gen 5 SSD, sharing bandwidth with USB 4. Everyone's doing it now. It's official. Wow, everyone's copying MSI. MSI did it first on the Tomahawk and the Godlike. And now everybody's doing it. Okay, mediocre number of rear USB type. Hey, remember, that was one of my big criticisms. They did not address that, although they did add another type C. Second PCIe slot, limited to PCIe Gen 3 X4 if you want 16 lanes for your GPU. I gotta think about what that actually means. That means... That's interesting. This is probably by far the most fascinating thing about this motherboard. It's just like, out of nowhere, one of the negatives is that you can only do Gen 3 X4 on the second PCIe slot if you want the GPU slot at the top to run full 16. Wait a minute, that means that it has a choice. It can either do 8 and it can do half and half, X8, X8, or it can do X16 and somehow miraculously do X4 Gen 3 on the second one? Oh, I see. ASUS must be using a PLX switch. They must be using not a MUX switch, or not necessarily a MUX switch, but they're using some kind of PLX chip to allow you to toggle all the bandwidth to the top slot. And when you use the second slot, it basically switches so that it pulls bandwidth from something else. Something else instead of the GPU slot. So we're going to have to draw the block diagram now. To figure out what that actually means, what that actually looks like. This might be the most fancy looking block diagram I've ever drawn because of the way ASUS did that that special little secret sauce they did there with that second PCIe slot. That all of a sudden makes this way more interesting. So it's X870E. That automatically means it's going to be dual chipset. All right. we're going to label these again. Okay, over here, so just so I'll put something here. So this is a dual channel DDR5. So DDR5 goes over here. You have channel A, channel B. This is dual channel. There's only 2 memory channels. And of that, it has daisy chain topology. Daisy chain topology. So you have right here and right here. This is A2. This is B2. Then right next to this guy, hanging off of him, basically daisy chain topology, you have A1 at the end, terminating the line, and B1 terminating the line. This means if you have 2 memory sticks and you install your memory sticks in A1 and B1 like some kind of noob who has no idea what they're doing, your computer will not turn on. It'll not be able to boot up. Why? Because you literally have an open circuit right here and right here. Electricity comes along here. You turn the computer on, electricity comes here. Electricity comes here. It's like, oh, the bridge is out. There's nothing here. Let's not boot up. Let's pretend that the computer's defective. But if you're a pro and you install the memory in A2 and B2, like someone who actually knows how to build a computer, when you turn on the computer, the electricity will go and it'll flow, and you're like, oh, there's something plugged in. I'm going to complete the circuit. The flow of electricity completes. Oh, there's something over here. I'll flow over here. Complete the circuit. Proceed to turn on the computer. Proceed to memory train. So this is what it means to be a daisy chain topology. It's daisy chained. One after another. They're connected linearly. You must install the first kit of memory in A2 and B2. Otherwise, if you install it in A1 and B1, the electricity is going to flow. Oh, there's nothing plugged in. Let's not do anything. Black screen. Don't even go to the BIOS. Don't even train. Don't even train the memory. There's no memory. There's no memory. There's no memory. There's no memory. I can't cross. I can't cross. I can't reach those 2 memory sticks over there. So it's as if they're not even plugged in. Basic troubleshooting 101. If this was a T topology, you might hear this phrase, T topology. What does that actually mean? That means A1, A2, B1, B2 are connected like this. A1, A2, B1, B2, like this. So that means if you plug it in, let's say you plug in the memory because you don't know any better, you're some kind of noob, so you plug in the memory in A1 and B1. Okay, electricity starts flowing when you turn the computer on. It's gonna flow, it's gonna like split and go to both. It's gonna flow to both. There's nothing here, so it's like, hey, I ain't going down there. It's a dark corner. I'm not going down the hall. That might be going to the basement of House Beneviento. You know what I'm saying? I ain't going down there. I ain't going down there. Who turned out the lights? I ain't going down there. I'm not going in the water treatment facility in that Resident Evil Requiem. Get me out of here right now. I ain't going in there with no flashlight. Even if I had a flash, I'm not going in there. So electricity's like, I ain't going down here. There's nothing there. It's dark. I'm not going in there. But there's something plugged in here. And there's something plugged in here. So let's turn on the computer now. Let's do the memory train. So basically, if you have a T topology, technically you can plug in RAM into any of these slots and it'll work. It's not the best convention to do it that way, but it will work. Because T topology means what? It means you have literally a T. A T. It's like a T. The letter T. It just so happens. Like this. It's split on the line. That is the T, the letter T, T topology. Daisy chain means one after another. Like it's some kind of, like some kind of nunchaku. You can swing those nunchakus around. You can swing this thing around like this, like this. That's daisy chain. Like it's like chain links. Chain links. This one's the first one in the chain link. This one's the second one in the chain link. You can just swing those around like nunchakus. That is daisy chain. So that is what it means. The second numbered one is always the first one in the chain link. A2, B2, and then the second chain link is always the first numbered one. I don't know who, I'm not the one who decided that. I don't know who decided that. Like who thought that was a good idea to confuse everyone and name it backwards like this? Because you would think, oh, electricity is flowing. Maybe the first thing that it comes in contact with should be labeled number 1. But it's actually not. It's actually number 2. That is the reason why they always tell you if you have 2 memory sticks, you plug them in A2 and B2. Because it's assuming you have a daisy chain topology, and that way you don't have to think about the type of memory topology you have. Okay. So this is a dual channel system. Now, let's pretend for a second, since we're on the topic of memory, what if we had a quad channel system? What is a quad channel system? Like, let's pretend we're dealing with Threadripper. How is Threadripper different from the regular Ryzen CPUs? Threadripper has something called quad channel. So quad channel means there's literally 4 of them. Channel C, channel D, like this. There is none of this nonsense A2, B2, A1, B. No, it's A, B, C, D, simple. You plug in one memory stick. It doesn't matter where you plug the memory in. You could plug it here. You could plug. Well, actually, I take that back. It does actually matter because sometimes the motherboard makers, oftentimes, they're going to set one of these to be the first one in the circuit, like the starting point for the node voltage. So usually that's how they work. But there's none of this concept of A1, A2, B1, B2 in the quad channel motherboards that only feature 4 sticks of memory, because you have 4 channels of memory, therefore you have 1 stick for every channel. Now, some motherboards, some fancy schmancy Threadripper motherboards that are like super uber super duper advanced. There are certain motherboards out there that actually have daisy chain 2DPC quad channel. So that means they have 8 memory slots. 8 memory slots on like a super high-end WRX. So if you're familiar with the certain Threadripper motherboard called WRX90, Sage, EEB from ASUS. This motherboard has like 8 slots of memory. And that is a 2DPC quad channel. So that has A2, B2, or whoops, A2, A1, B2, C2, etc., D2, like that, you know, B1, C1. So the same concept applies where you have a 2 DPC or a 2 DIMM per channel. This is 2 DIMMs per channel. This is a 2 DPC motherboard. If I didn't have those, if it was simply just this is a 1 DPC. This is a single channel or single DIMM, 1 stick of memory for 1 channel, 1 DPC. So like for example, my own motherboard, the TRX 50 Sage from ASUS, this is a 1 DPC motherboard. 1 DIMM per channels. It's 4 sticks of memory, but because it's quad channel, each stick of memory gets its own dedicated channel. This is the reason why it is very easy to run 4 sticks of memory, 4 sticks of DDR5 at 6400, 6400, 6400, 6400, because this is literally as though I was only running 2 sticks of memory on a regular Ryzen computer. When I run 4 sticks of memory on a Ryzen computer, like on an X870E Dark Hero, for example, if I was running 4 sticks of memory, that would be as challenging as if I was running 8 sticks of memory on a Threadripper motherboard, because then that becomes 2 DPC. So this is the reason why I'm trying to like help people understand the difference between quad channel, dual channel, 1 DPC, and 2 DPC, because there is a difference, and that is one of the reasons why it's much, much easier to run Threadripper with 4 sticks of memory versus 4 sticks of memory on a regular Ryzen motherboard, if that makes any sense at all. Hopefully that helps people understand that concept. Okay, so back to the... Now we're going to talk about the motherboard again. So we have AM5 socket, and we have the PROM21 primary and PROM21 secondary. This is the X870E Crosshair Dark Hero. Okay. So ASUS said, if we recall what ASUS said earlier, they said they've got a PCIe slot here. They've got an NVMe. I'm gonna do the NVMe going up. Well, actually, we'll do the NVMe going up. So we have M.2_1 or whatever. So that's your Gen 5 SSD. That's the one with the really thick heatsink. And then here, this is gonna be PCIe, what do they call this one? Like, it's like 5, well, it's 5.0, but it's, PCIe 1, I guess? The first PCIe slot, the top PCIe slot, we'll just name it this way. And then here we have the, actually, you know what? Let's do this differently. I'm going to extend this out. I'm going to need more space. So let's do the first one like this. PCIe_1, PCIe_2. Actually, this isn't going the... Okay, let's do PCIe_1, PCIe_2. And then what I'll do here is I'm going to draw everyone's favorite thing. You guessed it. ASM 4242. It got that giant heatsink. So you guys know what this is. What does this do? Hopefully you guys know what that is. Okay, and then, because what does this do? What does this provide? USB 4, USB 4, and also I want to add DisplayPort. DisplayPort. You can drive external monitors off of these USB 4 ports. You can literally run triple monitors with no graphics card off of this motherboard. One of them will be on HDMI because there's an HDMI on the back, but there's also dual USB 4. These utilize something called DisplayPort Alt Mode. So you can literally run a USB 4 certified cable that has video capable bandwidth. On one end, it's USB-C. That end plugs into the motherboard, into one of those 40 gig USB-C ports on the back. The other end is full DisplayPort. So you have a DisplayPort on one end of the cable, and you have USB-C, which is technically Thunderbolt 4, USB 4, or even Thunderbolt 5, USB 4 version 2 on the other end, and that will drive a monitor. So you can run triple monitors. We'll just get rid of this so it's not so messy. So you get the USB 4s. These have dedicated lanes to the CPU. Lots of bandwidth. 40 gigabit each. On each of those, 40 gigs. Okay. I forgot to label. This top line represents PCI 5.0 X24. 24 lanes total. Total lanes. What do we have down here? PCI 4.0 X4 lanes. Over here, PCIe 3.0 X4 lanes. Down here, PCI 4.0 X8 lanes. And PCIe 3.0 X4 lanes. You gotta have as many lanes as possible. That's why you go X870E. And why do we go X870E? We want Gen 5 bandwidth on the CPU lane. All of this is Gen 5. All of this is running off of Gen 4. Okay. So, in the motherboard, there is a thing that they have here. This is called a multiplexer. It could also be PLX switch, but we'll just say multiplexer. They have a multiplexer. That is going to basically, I guess I should put this in a box. And this goes in a box. This is going to connect to these two. Like this. Is that right? I think so. Is that right? Oh, yes. Yeah, that's right. Because there's another thing here. Let's put this like this. M.2_2, the second Gen 5 SSD. So remember, this motherboard features two Gen 5 SSDs. Why are they Gen 5 capable? Because they connect to the Gen 5 bus. However, the MUX... I did the MUX wrong. Whoops. I did the MUX wrong. Oh, I wish I could have just... Okay, anyway. So M.2... M.2_2 is like this. You have these guys like this, like this. Okay. The MUX connects this and this together. In fact, it also has a connection to the bus, because it's going to basically regulate. It's gonna determine how much bandwidth from the PCIe 5.0 bus does it give to the USB 4 versus this second Gen 5 SSD. So basically, the default behavior is exactly the same as the godlike. So what does that mean? And the tomahawk. So that means that this guy will get 2 lanes. Normally, this will get 2 lanes. This gets 16 lanes. This gets, well, okay, hold on. This is going to either be, this is going to be X16 or X8. This is going to be the sharing of that. This is either going to be X0. Well, it's a special mode, actually. So we're going to say it's either X0 or X8. But we're going to put an asterisk here, because I got to figure out what's going on there. There's some kind of spectacular thing. Some secret ASUS sauce they've got going on with the second PCIe slot. We'll come back to that. And then this is going to be 2 lanes default, or 4 lanes alternatively via the mux. And then this is going to be 2 lanes or 0 lanes. Meaning, if you want this Gen 5 SSD to run at like 80 degrees Celsius and go max out on 4 lanes, you can completely disable all the bandwidth to the ASM 4242. You can essentially make it so that this guy, the mux, will give all the bandwidth to the second Gen 5, making it run 4 lanes wide, leaving nothing, 0 lanes for the ASM 4242, aka the USB 4 ports on the back of the motherboard. I do not recommend that. I personally would never do that. I would stick with the default of 2 lanes to the Gen 5 NVMe and 2 lanes to the ASM 4242. This is way better. First of all, this is a Gen 5 slot. That means if you plug the perfect, what is the best NVMe for this? The best NVMe for this is known as the Samsung 990 EVO Plus. This is the best, currently best on the market option for the second NVMe slot, because this will run at PCI 5.0 X2, which means it's still going to have all of its performance while running on 2 lanes of Gen 5, which means you can still benefit from the massive USB 4 bandwidth on the back while still allowing an Evo Plus to run at full speed. This is exactly the thing that I personally do with the motherboard that we're streaming on right now. I am literally doing this exact setup on the computer that we're streaming on live right now. In fact, I am local recording the live stream to the Samsung 990 EVO Plus on a 2-lane Gen 5 bus width, while also using the capture cards on ASM 4242. So literally, this whole live stream is a working real-world example of everything that we're illustrating right here. Okay. So that is a massive improvement over the original Crosshair Hero from ASUS, because now it is better utilizing the Gen 5 bandwidth capabilities of the motherboard. Now, there is a little bit of a caveat here. So if you remember, we were talking about the second PCIe slot and its ability to allow the primary PCIe slot to operate at full 16 lanes, essentially sidestepping the dreaded lane sharing situation that a lot of mainstream motherboards run into. So what happens here is they actually have a really weird thing that they're doing with this motherboard. So what do? They have Another component. And I'm not 100% sure if this is the exact component, but I believe, based off of what they've stated in that review, that ASUS is leveraging something called the PLX switch. And this is something that you don't normally see on a lot of motherboards, especially motherboards in this day and age. So, what this does is this PLX switch will connect. Oh man, how am I going to draw this without being super messy? So, this. Okay, I'll just draw it this way. This guy goes all the way over here and connects to the bottom chipset, PCI 3.0 X4. So what this means is that normally, if you want to utilize the second PCIe slot, like on the original Crosshair Hero, it will take half of the lanes from the GPU to operate at 8 lanes. I believe it still has the option to do that. It can still do that. However, there is a selector in the BIOS, a setting that allows you to state utilize PCI 3.0 X4 instead of default. In fact, maybe this is the default. I don't know. If you do that, this will now no longer utilize the Gen 5 bus. Instead, it will oh boy, I have to draw over this. It will actually connect to the PLX switch, and it will receive its bandwidth from the bottom chipset. And it'll get 4 lanes of Gen 3. By doing this, the GPU can maintain 16 lanes off of the direct Gen 5 bus, and the second slot at the bottom of the motherboard will operate at X4 Gen 3, allowing you to plug in something like, I don't know, a capture card, like a 4K capture card, for example, like an Elgato or AverMedia Live Gamer 4K or something like that, or a network card that allows multiple 10 gig ports or something. Basically, something that can allow for additional utilization of peripherals inside the computer without compromising the GPU bandwidth. So that is actually a pretty nice feature that they're offering on this motherboard. So that's what that's doing. And then for the rest of it, you have your standard, you know, like down here, for example. Let's go ahead and draw the rest of this motherboard. So on the PCIe down here, we're going to have, let me read through the review notes again, what he say. They've got, okay, basically a gen, okay. So here we have M.2_4 apparently is over there. Is that right? Yeah, it is. Okay. So doing it that way. Okay. So the 4th NVMe is down here, and it gets all the bandwidth, all 4 lanes of Gen 4. And then here we have, what do we have here? You guessed it. Wi-Fi 7. 1 lane, Gen 3. What else? What else needs to be on here? Okay. They're doing some interesting stuff. ASUS is doing some interesting stuff. ASUS is doing some interesting stuff. ASUS is doing ASUS things. ASUS is being ASUS. So they got Wi-Fi. They've got SATA 1. They have the first SATA. They've got the second SATA. And then here, they're doing some weird stuff. Here, everybody's favorite, ASM 1162. Not 4242. In 1162. What does that mean? They got an ASM on that the last one lane. So this is one lane of Gen 3, one lane of Gen 3, one lane of Gen 3, one lane of Gen 3. All 4 Gen 3 lanes. And this guy is basically it's a splitter. This is splitting it out. It splits out one lane to allow for SATA E1 and E2. SATA E1 and E2. This means that you can do RAID. You can RAID these two, but you cannot run RAID on the other 2 SATA ports. So they're using this. They're taking one lane of Gen 3 to give you 2 SATA ports, where these first 2 SATA ports each get a dedicated lane. So these will support hardware RAID. These will not support hardware RAID, most likely, because they're going through a splitter. But most people aren't doing hardware RAID on consumer desktop anymore, so it doesn't really matter. To me, that's not a deal breaker at all. Okay. And I mean, let's be honest, if you're running 3.5-inch hard drives in 2026 on a consumer motherboard, you don't care if they're running on a splitter or not, because they're literally old, super slow hard drives. Okay. What else? Down here, what have we got? One thing down here. M.2_3. And ASUS is doing ASUS things again. ASUS is doing ASUS stuff. M.2_5. The 5th M.2. The little tiny M.2. The little tiny M.2 is down here. And there's another caveat about it. But we need more lanes to fit all this stuff, so we're not done yet. We got one more. And we've got one more. So this is 5 gig LAN. This is 10 gig LAN. How many lanes of Gen 4 do you need to do 10 gig LAN? One lane. One lane. One lane for Gen 5, or one lane for 5 gig, which is overkill, because you only need one lane of Gen 3 for 5 gig. So there's a little bit of an overkill here on this 5 gig, but that's the only way they could fit it in. So you get 5 gig on one lane, 10 gig on one lane. 10 gig needs 2 lanes of Gen 3, therefore it needs 1 lane of Gen 4. So 1 lane of Gen 4 is enough for 10 gig networking. And then this is going to be 4 lanes, and the tiny 2230 is only going to get 2 lanes of Gen 4. So if you're buying this motherboard, just know that that 5th tiny little 2230 slot only gets 2 lanes. There's only 2 lanes, because the math has to add up to a total of 8. 4 plus 2 plus 1 plus 1 equals 8 lanes. There, everything is accounted for. And then all 4 of these lanes go to the PLX to provide 4 lanes to the second slot so that the GPU can maintain 16 Gen 5 lanes. Therefore, this motherboard is probably one of the more unique motherboards in the sense that this gives you the option. If you don't care about 16 lanes of Gen 5 bandwidth, if you're okay with running 8 lanes of Gen 5 on a Gen 5 GPU, you can run a second Gen 5 GPU at 8 lanes. Very good stuff. Very good stuff. Okay. So I actually kind of like this. There's no slim SAS. Everything is accounted for. No lanes are wasted. And it has a cool little gimmick with that PLX switch to allow to utilize the bottom slot without impacting the top PCIe slot. So that's pretty good. And it doesn't scratch the GPUs anymore because they put the button back on there. Okay. That's pretty much it. That's a pretty good motherboard. After doing the analysis, I've come to the conclusion this is a pretty good motherboard. The ASUS X870E Dark Hero's pretty good. All right. Let's move on to a different topic here. Now we're going to talk about gaming. Let me bring this back up here. Let's discuss Crimson Desert, the most hyped up game in Q1 of 2026. Crimson Desert gets detailed PC console and Mac specs. Oh, it runs on Mac. Whoa. PS5 Pro supports the new PSSR and ray tracing. Wow, these guys are going all out. They're going all out. All the features. They're leaving nothing on the table. Man, everything. Wow. There's another story here. Crimson Desert is on a completely different level. We're going to look at that one next. Okay, let's discuss the PC specs for this game. This article came out 2 days ago from WCCF Tech. Pearl Abyss has revealed the detailed PC specs and the console specs for this game. All right, let's take a look. Minimum spec. If you want to play Crimson Desert a week from today, you will need, at minimum, a GPU that supports upscaling for 1080p from 900p to achieve 30 frames per second. You must have, at minimum, a Radeon RX 5500 XT or an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1060. That will provide 30 frames per second at 900p. And you can upscale to using FSR to 1080p. The CPU is a really old CPU from 8 years ago, almost 8 years ago. The Ryzen 5. Wait, 8 years ago? Dude. Whoa. That is not even a middle-aged CPU. That is like an ancient dinosaur CPU. The AMD Ryzen 5 2600X or the Intel i5 8500. This CPU isn't even like officially supported on Windows 11. It doesn't have the TPM module. 16 gigs of RAM. I don't understand this 16 gigs of RAM nonsense. That to me sounds like the most fake thing I've seen today. Windows 10. Okay, that operating system is technically end of support. So I don't really know what to tell Pearl Abyss in this regard. Like, did you guys not get the memo that Windows 10 is technically end of support? So this should really read Windows 11, but okay. 150 gigabytes of SSD required. SSD required. If you don't have 150 gigabytes on an SSD to fit this game, you don't even meet the minimum specifications. All hard drives are disqualified from running this game. And okay, I guess SATA SSDs, they don't specify NVMe versus SATA. So I'm guessing a 2.5-inch SATA SSD will probably work. Would I personally recommend that? No. But yeah, anyway, they just say SSD required. Low spec. That was minimum spec. That's basically, this is like the Reddit meme, like it's going to look terrible one right here, these minimum spec. All right, low specs. 1080p, 30 frames per second. Radeon RX 6500 XT or GeForce GTX 1660. Same CPU, same RAM, same, okay. Okay. Recommended spec, medium preset. with these specs, will get you 1080p, 60 frames per second, or get this, 4K, 30 frames per second. You need to have an RX 6700 XT or an GeForce RTX 2080. Now all of a sudden the CPU changes significantly. Now they've jumped up from a 2018 CPU to a late 2020, like early 2021 CPU. That is a pretty significant step up. So they went from a Zen Plus and an 8th gen to like a Zen 3 and an 11th gen. These are literally pandemic CPUs. These CPUs were brand new in the pandemic. That's how old they are. So that's for the recommended specs. So I would say so far, nothing stands out as like crazy. Everything kind of looks normal to me so far. This doesn't look bad. I mean, pandemic PC is a pretty low spec in 2026. So we're talking like 5 years old at this point. So that's kind of old. So you know how I've already stated like 3, 5, 7. You know, there's upgrade cycles in a 3-year cycle or a 5-year cycle or a 7-year cycle. So these CPUs are at the 5-year mark. So they're really old. Okay, so high settings, 1440p, 60 frames per second. So if you want to play the game on high preset at 1440p 60, this is usually the most common. It's becoming more and more common among PC gamers. 1440p 60 frames per second target, high settings, not ultra, just high settings. Radeon RX 7700 XT or a GeForce RTX 4070. Ryzen 5 7600X or a Intel i5 12600K. So these are CPUs that run DDR5 memory. Although this Intel CPU might run DDR4 memory, so there might be a problem there depending on how memory bandwidth heavy this game is. All right, and then 16 gigs and nothing else changed. Okay, here's what I'm interested in. Because you guys know me, I only game at 4K. 4K Ultra all the time. So 4K Ultra, 60 FPS target, you will need the current generation Radeon RX 9070 XT or the NVIDIA RTX 5070 Ti. Those GPUs are fundamentally equivalent to one another in terms of like how good they are in rasterization. And this game is definitely going to be a rasterization heavy game. All right, AMD Ryzen 7 7700. Okay, this is like these are slightly higher step ups compared to these, but they're basically the same. So, yeah. So, okay. So, I'm expecting this game, for most people that watch my channel, the people that usually watch my gaming streams, they have similar spec computers to what I'm using. I think we don't have anything to worry about for Crimson Dead. I think it's going to be easy. This is going to be an easy mode game, not challenging to run hardware-wise, totally reasonable specifications. Really, really good stuff. Z97 is not 9 years old, dude. Z97 is more than 10 years old. That's like a almost 12-year-old motherboard at this point. Unless you bought it 9 years ago, which means you didn't buy current generation. 7900 and 9070, yeah. Yeah. So I think most of us don't have any problems, man. I think that this is going to be an easy game to run. So that's good. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm not saying that's good. This is totally fine. Totally acceptable. It's probably going to run real smooth for most people with decent computers that are like less than 3 years old. And even if you have a 5-year-old computer, like a 5-year-old computer is going to be able, well, at least CPU wise. Let me see. When was this? This was, yeah, this is 5 years old. The GeForce 2080 is like super old. This is like a 2018 GPU. That is super, super old. So, and that can do 1080p 60. So yeah, that's acceptable considering how old that is. What else we got here in this article? Perlabis shared some details about console. Okay, console. Okay, this is interesting. So PlayStation 5, the base PlayStation 5, in performance, so they've got 3 modes. You can run the game on console in performance, balance, or quality. And, okay. So it looks like you can run the game at 1080p, 60 frames per second on a base PS5. And that's 1080p. That's, you know what I've been wondering this for a while. Why do a lot of these games on console target 4K output? Why can't they just do 1080p? Like, just straight up 1080p. None of this upscale, none of this 4K. Just give me 1080p like back in the day. Pearl Abyss, they give the PS5 the option to play the game at straight up 1080p. And it runs at 60 frames per second. Or if you have a variable refresh monitor or TV, 60 FPS or better. So you could probably try to target like a 120 hertz mode at 1080p resolution. And ray tracing is set to low. Interesting. Okay, if you set it to balanced mode will play the game at an upscaled 4K from 1280p. That is very, very strange for PS5. In my opinion, this is like too much for PS5. Personally, what I would have preferred they would have done is do 1080p upscale to 4K. That probably would have been able to get closer to 60 frames per second. So I don't know about this. This 40 FPS mode seems kind of weird. You don't see this very often with a lot of games. And then, of course, you have your 4K upscaled from 1440p with FSR3. That runs at 30 frames per second. Okay. What about PS5 Pro? PS5 Pro. So the nice thing about PS5 Pro, I automatically looking at this, I'm thinking, man, PS5 Pro is the way to play this game if you are on the consoles. Because look at this. PS5 Pro can do 60 frames per second or more than 60 frames per second VRR with a 4K output via 1080p PSSR upscale. That is pretty good. That's very good, actually. So if I was going to play this game on PS5 Pro, or if I was going to play the game on console, now that I have literally all the consoles, I would choose PS5 Pro and I would play it on performance mode utilizing PSSR to upscale from 1080p to 4K. So that way I can get my 60 FPS. This is personally how I would play the game on console. PS5 Pro, because those people that are like, oh, PS5 Pro is not needed, base PS5. Yeah, no. Base PS5 is a pandemic console. It's so old now. No way. No way. PS5 Pro can handle current generation games. Yes, it relies on upscaling to get to 4K. But hey, most GPUs in the PC space also rely on upscaling to get to playable frame rates. So the PS5 Pro is right up there with all those mid-range GPUs and hanging in there with all of them. So the fact that it can do this is very good. And get this, it's doing this performance mode with ray tracing set to high. I cannot wait to watch the Digital Foundry or the IGN video that goes into the technicals of the console analysis. Because, man, that PS5 Pro version of Crimson Desert is going to probably be the way to play if you are on a console. And then the balance mode has that like 50 FPS VRR. I don't know. I'd rather run it on performance for that locked 60 or that variable 60 with ray tracing high. I just think that's the better deal. PSSR is a very good upscaler. And then if you want to run the game for screenshot mode, you want to take screenshots, 4K output on an OLED 65-inch TV in the living room, traditional console. PS5 Pro does it best. You can get those 4K quality screenshots, 30 FPS with ultra ray tracing on PS5 Pro. So yeah, I'm probably gonna have to. There's already a digital video. Oh, for the console? Oh, okay. I might. Yeah, I have to check that out. Okay. All right, Xbox Series S, 720p, 40 FPS with no ray tracing, low ray tracing, 1080p, and performance. Why is there two performance modes? So there's a 720p performance mode and there's a 1080p performance mode. That's interesting. Why is this one faster than this one? Oh no, this is Xbox Series X. Okay, I see. Okay, so the Series X can do just like the base PS5. It has that performance 1080p, 60 FPS with low ray tracing. It has the balanced mode, which is exactly the same, and then it has the upscale. So it's basically the same as the base PS5, or yeah, base PS5. Same exact resolutions with the same exact upscaling multipliers. So, okay. So Series X and base PS5 are very, very similar. Okay, and then it's one of the few AAA games to launch day one on Mac. Alright, so if you have a Mac and you want to play Crimson Desert, alright, let's take a look. Mac OS 15, Metal FX Upscale. I didn't even know Mac had upscaling. I have never heard of Metal FX Upscale until now. This is literally the first time I've ever read these words. Metal FX Upscale. For this Mac. What? Oh, graphics preset. For this Mac. For this Mac. For this Mac. What else is there besides for this Mac? Alright, then we've got minimum 720p 30 FPS on Mac OS 15. And then there's minimum for this Mac 900p. Is this a meme? Like, what is this? For this Mac 720p? For this Mac 900p? For this... Huh? What? What's changing? What's changing? Like, okay, they're changing the resolution? Why is this one 720p 30, but this one with ultra settings for this Mac can do 4K 40 FPS? I am legit confused. Like, I don't understand what this table is saying. Mac OS 26 Plus. So apparently, if you download an operating system update, you can all of a sudden play the game at 4K 60 for this Mac. On for this Mac graphics. I don't think we need to waste any more time reading this. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Chips. The M2 Pro can handle the game. Oh, now it makes sense. M2 Pro can handle this game with no ray tracing at 720p 30. Meanwhile, the M4 Max and M3 Ultra can handle the game at 4K 60 on upscaled resolution utilizing Metal FX Upscale / frame interpolation. Okay. I have no idea what any of this means because I don't know. Like, okay, I understand, like, M4 Max is newer than M2 Pro, and Metal FX Upscale is a upscaler like FSR, and frame interpolation is also it's like a temporal upscale like FSR2, so, or 3. So okay. 16 gigs of RAM. Okay, wow. They also did the handhelds. Xbox Ally and Xbox Ally X. Xbox Ally X can run the game at 60 FPS, upscale to 1080p from 720p, utilizing FSR3 plus frame gen. So you can get to 60 FPS on the handheld. Native 720p plus frame gen gets you 60 FPS. I don't know if I consider that impressive or not. I don't really pay attention to the handheld market that much, but that sounds good. I guess on a small screen it's probably no problem. So wow, okay, that's a lot of stuff in this article. Really good write up in terms of the spec requirements. So I'm gonna do a poll, and then we're probably gonna end the stream. Are you getting Crimson Desert? Yes or no? Let's see how many people are gonna get this game. The poll is up. Are you getting Crimson Desert? It seems like so far everyone that's voted is saying yes. Oh, somebody said no. This is currently the most hyped up game right now. It is so hype. I mean, look at it. Crimson Desert. It is so hyped up. Most hyped up game of the year besides GTA 6. Oh, you got it with the 9070. Oh, wait, there's the bundles are already out? Wait, hold up. They've got 9070 XT bundles for Crimson Desert already? Oh, yeah, Mark saying I got it with my 9950 X3. That is literally the best CPU right now. That is like best of the best. And it comes with a game. What? Dude, look at this game. This game, look at, if you, okay, let me put it this way. If you are a fan of the following games, if you enjoyed the following games, you should get this game. And I'm going to list those games. Okay, we don't have a lot of space. I'm going to have to put them up here in the top right. If you enjoyed the following games, if you like the any of the following games, let's list those now. Number 1, Witcher 3, Final Fantasy 16, Dragon's Dogma 2, Monster Hunter Wilds, Elden Ring. Man, there was another one that I was thinking of earlier. I can't remember the name right now. I'm drawing a blank. What was it? Oh. Breath of the Wild. Yeah, that was it. What else? There was another one too. Okay, less so, but if you enjoyed Neo, kind of. Neo, because it's fast-paced action. But Neo is extremely punishing. Crimson Desert is going to be way more forgiving. So I don't know if I should include Neo. I kind of want to take it off the list because it's more of like a super hardcore. Maybe change. Well, Neo slash Stranger of Paradise. Basically, if you enjoyed Final Fantasy Origins, Stranger of Paradise, or the Neo series, you're probably gonna like this game. I kind of want to also include Devil May Cry, but sort of. Like, Devil May Cry has a very different vibe. This is the reason why I said Final Fantasy 16. Anyone who enjoyed Devil May Cry will love Final Fantasy 16. Final Fantasy 16 is literally Devil May Cry. It's literally Final Fantasy Devil May Cry. Final Fantasy 16 equals Devil May Cry. So we're going to remove Devil May Cry. Because I've already included it via Final Fantasy 16. So, what else? There was like another... I think that's enough. Any of these. Breath of the Wild, Neo, Stranger of Paradise. Maybe... No, I don't really want to include Onimusha. Onimusha's not been around for a long time. Yeah, any of these. It's like a mix of like these type of games. It's kind of like these. In the sense that these are... this isn't really open world, though. Maybe this is kind of... maybe remove this. Maybe not. The only reason why I put that in there is because it's fast-paced, but... This game is more of an open world game. Neo... Only Neo 3 is an open world game. So that's kind of why I put Neo in there. But definitely Breath of the Wild, Elden Ring, Monster Hunter Wilds, Dragon's Dogma 2, Final Fantasy 16, Witcher 2. These are all big open world games. Open world games. So, yeah. I think this is a good enough list. So if you're someone who enjoyed any one of these games on this list, I mean, you know what? I might actually put... yeah, Red Dead Redemption, I guess. Yeah. Because it's kind of... I mean, it's open world. So, yeah. Any of these games. If you enjoyed any one of the following games on this list, you should definitely strongly consider playing Crimson Desert. Crimson Desert is a mix of, like, all of these games. Legit. It's got Elden Ring open world design. It's got Dragon's Dogma 2 world building design. It's got Final Fantasy 16 / Devil May Cry combat. It's got Witcher 3 open world town and quest design. It has Breath of the Wild puzzle open world exploration design. It has Red Dead Redemption character building and interactivity. Dude, so many things. So many things. This game is trying to do so many things. This is the... Thank you for including Skyrim. That was the game that I couldn't remember. And finally somebody mentioned it because I was thinking like, man, something is missing. But yeah, Skyrim. There you go. That's it. If you enjoyed any one of those 8 games on this list, you should strongly consider getting Crimson Desert. You will probably not be disappointed. But now do you guys understand why the hype for this game is so big? It is at an all-time high because it is trying to do what so many amazing games were able to do in the past. So this is it. This is the style. It's got these styles meshed together. Okay, we're going to end the poll. I'm surprised quite a number of people said no. It's almost 60-40 split, which is very surprising. There's a bunch of people that are not getting this game. I don't know who those people are, like in the sense that do those guys not play any of those games that I just listed? I guess maybe, I don't know. Um, anyway, so 59% say yes, 40% say no. I myself will be getting the game. Will be covering the game, although I'm not sure when I'll be covering the game. The game comes out a week from now. I will try to cover the game this or the weekend that the game is out, but there's a lot of stuff that I have on my plate for the next 2 weeks. So I don't know, we may not do the typical gaming live streams on the weekend that this game is out. So it's just because things just line up the way they line up. So I'll have to cover it probably after. We'll see. But that being said, that's probably going to do it for this episode of Tech Thursdays. The nodes are all currently broke. I mean, maybe, but the thing is, like, this game was hyped up for so many months now. Since the start of this year, I feel like this game has been on a really, really long hype cycle. Not nearly as long as GTA, mind you. However, it has been hyped up a lot. So I feel, and there's not a whole lot of other games that are coming out right now that are similar. So I feel like if someone was interested in the game, even mildly interested in the game, they had a pretty long time to prepare to save up for it. But anyway. Alright guys, that's going to be it. If you're new to the channel, we do these Tech Thursdays live streams every Thursday. Typically they cover the sort of stuff that you guys saw with that motherboard. This was like technically focused on PC DIY, but we also do talk about gaming from time to time. On the topic of gaming, I oftentimes will do 1 or 2 live streams on the weekend featuring a new game. So we mentioned Crimson Desert. I will be covering that game in the near future, so stay tuned for that. And this weekend, we are going to be live streaming the playthrough of another game with the name Crimson in the name. So if you're interested in watching or tuning into the gaming live streams on the weekend, I go live either on a Friday evening or a Saturday evening. So the only way to know for sure is to hit that bell icon so you get notified when I go live if you care to watch the gaming streams. Otherwise, I'm going to get on out of here. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you guys next week. Until then, take care and see you then. Thanks.